We're all ready to go. So good morning and welcome, and thank you for coming out to our session this morning. My name is Mark Dubois. I am a 20 group moderator, consultant, and trainer for NIADA. Our session this morning is Ask the Tough Lease Here, Pay Here questions. We had a session yesterday I called Part 1, which was Why Lease Here, Pay Here Works. We had a good turnout. We had lots of questions after that one, so I had purposely set it up that we would have the session yesterday to go over why Lease Here, Pay Here works, and then follow that up with our distinguished panel of Lease Here, Pay Here dealers so that you could ask the questions that are on your mind about Lease Here, Pay Here. So we got an hour actually to get this session underway, so there may be a few more people that filter in during the course of the session, but that's great. Let me just give you a quick format or overlay as to what we're going to do here. In a moment, I'll ask the panel members to introduce themselves. We're fortunate to have three very experienced Lease Here, Pay Here dealers as our panel members to share their wisdom and their experience with you and, of course, answer your questions. Second, I have a couple starter questions that I've got from some dealers to sort of get things warmed up and kick off the questions and get the flow going. And then the balance of it is going to be questions from you. And so a couple of things about questions from you is, number one, there are no bad questions. Ask the question if it's on your mind, because if it's on your mind, it's probably on the mind of several other people here in the room, so you'd be doing them a question by asking it. The second thing is, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Step up to the microphone, it'll be better. We're recording this session, so if you don't step up from to the microphone, I'll have to repeat your question just so that it flows in the recording that we're doing. So if you could, that's all we got to do, and we're going to make a good hour out of this. So microphone and panel members, we're good. So let me start by introducing our panel members. I'll go to my immediate right and ask Nick to introduce himself, tell us a little bit about your business, and then I got a follow-up question.
Good morning, everybody. I'm finding a little cold, so please excuse that. My name is Nick Marcosi, and I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. We have 3 locations from Utah up north into Logan. We currently average about 220 units a month, and around 60 of those are retail deals. The rest are in-house leases. We currently are knocking on the door of around 2,100 accounts. Been in business for 20 years. What were the other ones?
How many locations?
3, I said.
Three
Three
locations. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So that's just a brief profile on Nick's business. So, Nick, if you can share with us, what is the biggest lesson you've learned in the Lease Here, Pay Here business?
You got to plan. You got to model it out. Whatever you think it's going to cost to open another location, it'll cost more. And the cash flow, you have to understand how your cash flow works really well. And as smart as I am, I'm always wrong. I have to bounce it off of people that are smarter than me and understand financials and cash flows better than me. And so if you have a brilliant, bright idea about whatever, make sure you bounce it off of an expert before you execute.
Excellent advice. Okay, let's move over to our second panel member. Kevin, tell us about yourself and your business.
My name's Kevin Franks. I'm with Benchmark Auto Sales. I'm their CFO. We have 3 locations across the state of North Carolina, and we run the entire state from end to end. Across the 3, we are north of 2,100 accounts of lease accounts, and we do roughly, across the 3 stores, 225 cars every month. Am I missing anything there?
No, that's good. So from your perspective, what's the biggest lesson you've learned in the Lease Here, Pay Here business?
So I'm naturally an accountant. That is what I do for Benchmark as well. And while I will echo Nick's, you have to plan, you have to execute the plan. When you budget and you say, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do 40 cars next month, if you go out and you do 50 cars next month, you're going to have a problem.
Good advice. And our third panel member, Joe, tell us about your operation.
Well, good morning. My name is Joe Powell. I'm from Southwest Oklahoma. We have 3 locations I started the dealership in '08, the second location in '11, and the third location in '16. We're currently running right around 600 accounts. We're in more rural areas, so we sell a combined of about 60 units per month, but each location is a little bit smaller, so we might only have, a collector and a salesperson per location. So that's about it.
Okay, good. And Joe, from your perspective, what's the biggest lesson you've learned in the lease here, pay here business?
I felt like the biggest option that I had to learn initially when I started out was whenever a car would come back in to get recycled to go back out, we all get accustomed to thinking we want to sell a car and make $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on it. What we want to do is sell that car and make $25,000 to $30,000 on it and continue to roll it over and recycle it and not let a return upset the apple cart, upset the collectors, upset everybody in the family, but let them understand that's an opportunity that we're going to turn that car back around, and all we're doing is selling use of a vehicle. So we need to keep that car going, keep it out on the street, and keep cash generating.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, please join me in welcoming our panel members and giving their time here to share their experience with you. All right, so I hope you've given some thought or are giving some thought to your questions as we understand the profile and the experience we've got up here. Let me start with a couple of questions for the panel members and get things rolling. Joe, I'll go to you and ask you the question, in your opinion, why is lease here, pay here quicker, easier, and simpler than, say, buy here, pay here?
Everything I do, I try to do around quicker, easier, and simpler. Everybody at the family knows, at the house knows, we want to do it the quickest, easiest, and simplest way. To us, lease here, pay here is so much quicker, easier, and simpler than buy here, pay here. We don't have all the regulation. We don't have the related finance companies. We don't have to sell the car off, mark it down, pay profits on unrealized taxes on unrealized profits, repossess that car, reverse that whole transaction. To us, that is a freaking nightmare, and we want no part of it. So whenever we sell a lease, we hit delivered, we're done. We're ready to start generating cash. We're ready to start collecting the cash that we put on the street. We really don't want that nightmare that I don't understand people wanting.
Awesome. Anybody want to add anything to that? Okay, Nick, let's go to your, I've got a question I'll direct to you. Can you sell a nicer, newer car under the lease here, pay here business model versus buy here, pay here?
Yeah, the answer to that, I think, is yes, just because of the structure of a lease. At the end of the lease, there's money owed, or you get the asset back. And as you probably, if you're in the buy here, pay here business, as you probably know, the chances of you getting that asset back in either model are pretty high. But because you're going to get the vehicle back and there's a value at the end of that lease, a residual value, you're going to be able to sell a slightly newer, nicer car than your competitor. And I think that's a really huge competitive advantage in the buy here, pay here industry. To be able to sell even a model year or two newer vehicle than your competitor with 30, 40, 50,000 less miles, that's a pretty compelling competitive advantage. And you can do it with your capital expenditure. You can do it with your income and your down payments. You can actually sell a newer, nicer car and end up being in the same or even a better position than under the buy here, pay here model. That is a legitimate competitive advantage.
Great, thank you. Great answer. Kevin, as the person that looks after the dollars and the cents and the money as the CFO of your company, you probably have a lot of attention on the tax laws and implications of those. With the new tax law changes, what are the implications for a lease here, pay here dealer? Or more specifically, what are the benefits and downfalls, if you can answer that in less than an hour?
Less than an hour, I'm not sure about that. So the tax law changes really gave us a lot of opportunities. They came out with bonus depreciation, Section 179 depreciation, allowing you to expense the car. For somebody trying to get into the buy here, pay here, lease here, pay here world, the problem, especially in lease here, pay here world, is you own that asset. You have to take the depreciation on that asset. And so all of a sudden, you've put this car out on the street and you don't get to expense it. So you have income that you don't actually have in your hand, from the sense of your car is producing your income to collect that car back, and you're trying to grow your accounts to get up to where you can truly operate. So with the tax law changes that they've done, you can actually expense those cars in the year you put them into service immediately, irrelevant of whether you're profitable or not, and generate a loss. That's pretty helpful.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Simple answer on a complicated subject. I'm going to start to go to the microphone for the questions from the floor. So if you've got a question, please step up to the microphone. And well, here we go. We'll get rolling. Over to you. Thank you for volunteering.
I'm from Minnesota, and in our state, you have to pay all the tax up front with the lease. Is that a deal killer?
I personally don't think so. There's many other advantages to leasing besides just the sales tax advantage. And just for those of you who don't know, in most states, you only pay sales tax on the money you actually collect, which is the down and the monthly payments. So if you were to retail a buy here, pay here unit for $10,000, your sales tax is likely between 6 and 8%. That's about $800 per car, negative cash flow for your business. Whereas on a lease, you'll pay sales tax on the down payment, a fraction. Now, as the lease turns out, of course, you're going to end up paying the same amount. But to get that advantage, it's just a humongous cash flow advantage for a lease or pay your operation. You're saying that you're not allowed to do that in Minnesota, that whether you lease or purchase, you still have to pay the sales tax all up front. Is that?
That's right.
Okay. So there's just so many other advantages to leasing that I think that would not be a deal killer. And we can get into the advantages, other advantages if you'd like.
Okay, so let's say I'm interested. I want to do this. I kind of get it, but what would be the best way to? I mean, I think if I got 10 deals under my belt, I think I'd be really good. But what would be the best way for me to get someone to coach me to do 10 deals?
Could I back up on your first question to begin
Sure.
with? There's two ways of looking at that. In Oklahoma, the state tax law says if you write a lease for more than 12 months, you have to pay the tax on the full amount of the car. If it's less than 12 months, you can pay tax on the per payment. We like longer than 12 months. We do have to pay up front, but we're also paying 3.25% versus 8.25% sales tax. So therefore, I'm planning on keeping that car in the family 5 or 6 years, generating payments on it. I would rather pay one time 3.25% than I had pay 8.25% over $25,000 or $30,000. So it is more capital up front, but in the long run, it's saving thousands of dollars over the taxes. So that's why we like doing it that way.
So if you pay one time, don't you have to pay one time every time you do a new lease?
No, sir. One time, once the vehicle, I buy the car from Kevin.
I get it.
The title changes from his name to my name. I pay the tax at that time.
I get it.
Every time I generate a new lease, the title is already in my name.
That's a good point.
So I do not pay excise tax when those vehicles change.
Okay. Who should I turn to get me through my first 10 deals?
A 20 group.
Well, another suggestion I have is I call it lease here, pay here row in the convention hall. Almost all of the vendors I do business with are all together. Neo scoring system on one side, LHPH on the other side. DealPack, who is my DMS provider, is right down from there. And then AFS dealers. I think that's. I hope I'm getting.
So I'm
that name.
DealPack too. So
In
that's
fact,
a
they're a
good lease.
consulting company. They're lease experts, and they could help you get the ball rolling. But one thing I would suggest that you ask is why. Why are you so interested in the model? What's compelling about it? What are your motives?
Well, I like the fact that there's a lot of regulations, that you can avoid. I think that it's easier to repo. The profit potential is much greater. I think if you have a creative mind, I think it's a better model.
I think you should come up here.
Okay.
That was a pretty good argument for it.
Yeah.
So I'd like to just touch on that subject as well. If you didn't attend our Why Lease Here, Pay Here Works session yesterday, I mentioned that we have a new addition to our dealer education training lineup, and it is Lease Here, Pay Here Training School. Our next official date is November 13th and 14th in Sarasota, Florida. And so if you're interested in or looking to get into Lease Here, Pay Here, or you want some coaching on how to design your Lease Here, Pay Here payments, you want to understand Regulation M, you want to understand deal structure, underwriting, and collections in a Lease Here, Pay Here business model, it's there and available for you. So if you want to come by the NIADA booth at the trade show after this session, be happy to give you information on it and tell you a little more about the session. Go ahead, yes, step up to the mic. And if there's someone there, just line up behind them. That's great. I don't want to do all the talking or ask all the questions. This is your session. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, this is kind of a repeat question from yesterday. I was at the first session yesterday, and we looked into Lease Here, Pay Here a while back, and when we checked insurance for the vicarious liability insurance, that was really sky high. All our insurance agent and a couple referrals, same thing. The other way was a company that provides the software and the insurance. That seemed to be very, very high as well, because they charge per deal, and it was, and so I'm aware of the law that is on our side, but the issue is when I spoke to our attorney, his view was that it doesn't matter what the law is if you constantly have to defend yourself, because you're spending money defending yourself against some issue, and the person that's coming after you, even though they know they have a losing argument, they may come after you for a settlement. So that's the one concern that I have. The other thing that I wanted to ask you is, we do buy here, pay here. And what we've noticed, and the reason that we want to go towards leasing, is that our customer, after 8-9 months, is already sick of their car and they're looking at another car on our lot. What is your average term, and what is the benefit of having a 3-year term with leasing rather than just a 1-year term, which allows the customer to choose a different car at the end of the 1 year?
Okay, let me just summarize if I could. There's 2 different questions there, and I'll ask each of you to volunteer your answer. Let's touch first on vicarious liability. Nick, how big of an issue is that for you? How much exposure do you feel there is under the vicarious liability situation?
So we've leased thousands of cars since 2010, since we've started, and we've had 0 lawsuits regarding what you're talking about. The Graves Amendment protects us. Now, people can sue you for any reason. Sure. And I have a friend who's a dealer in California. I mean, that poor guy gets sued every other day. And it is cheaper to settle than to go, get it through the court process. That's just a risk we take being out there, whether you're buy here, pay here, or lease here, pay here, or whatever. And, the vicarious liability, if some attorney thinks he can find a hole in it and sue you, that's just another thing they can do, right? But for me, I've been in business and doing this a long time, and I have yet to have any kind of a lawsuit or a problem related to vicarious liability. With regard to your second question,
average term of their lease.
Oh, we base that on the age of the vehicle. If it's a low 500 down, repoed at 3-time vehicle, we're going to do a 12-month lease on that. If it's, say, a 2010 to 2013, we'll do a 2-year lease, and the newer stuff we do 3-year leases. Our average lease terms is 27 months. So you actually make a really good point. Customers, our customers, it's more like 1 month. They want to upgrade, and it's a battle that we constantly have to fight. And our customers, they'll get a mailer from our Nissan dealer, $199 a month, and they're paying us $400 a month for the Sentra. So they're constantly trying to get out of the vehicle. That's just part of the nature of the kind of customer we're dealing with. But I can tell you that because of our lower terms, we're better equipped to deal with that than your typical buy here, pay here customer. It's not as painful for us from a profit and loss perspective to get customers out of that vehicle and into another one. Because on a buy or pay here, of course, you got to charge it off, you got to take a huge hit on it to put it to get it back, and you're really financially discouraged from upgrading that customer. Whereas under the lease model, it's still painful and there's still a cost associated with it, but it's certainly not near the P&L hit that you would take under the buy or payer model. And it works really well. It's a great motivator for our customers to continue paying. Just a few more months, Mr. Customer, and we'd be happy to upgrade you. Or tax time, is huge for upgrades.
Joe, do you want to touch on that vicarious liability from your side of the world? How much of an issue is that?
I'm just like Nick, been doing this a long time, put lots of cars on the street, have had zero liability exposure to vicarious liability. I too started out with those companies that want to sell you the insurance because I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to do. So I did hire one of those companies. I did pay them their fee every month because they did tell me vicarious liability, all these lawsuits, blah, blah, blah. I bought all that. I started there, I did that. Year and a half into the road, I'm like, why in the hell am I sending them a check? I sent them a cancellation note instead. I didn't need all that stuff. I didn't need to buy that nonsense anymore. So they're going to sell it. It's up to you what you do. But also with vicarious liability, if you did your due diligence up front, if you made sure that customer had insurance, if you did everything that's within your power that you're supposed to do, just like you're doing today, that's also protecting yourself. So we do not feel vicarious liability is an issue. I, like Nick, believe that it's much easier, like I said, quicker, easier, and simpler is the way I want to do things. We like to upgrade a customer at 13 months. Yes, they're going to start looking at the car in tomorrow. They're going to see a better car on your lot tomorrow. But it's a whole lot easier to void that deal, bring that car back into inventory. You got to clean it up, go through that process again. But it's so much easier to do than going all the way back through your RFC and unwinding that whole deal. Guys, all we're doing is selling payments per month on a car. Make it easier on yourself.
So by your answers, I'm assuming all three of you are self-insured then on the vicarious liability? You don't carry any?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, good question. Thank you. Please step up to the microphone if you got a question, because I'm going to default to your questions first, my questions second.
Okay, so I have a few questions. I hope that's okay. I was wondering, what do you guys charge for down payments? He was mentioning something that's like 500 down. How does that go?
So say that slowly.
I
What?
was saying, what kind of down payments are you guys normally charging customers? He's mentioned 500 down. I was just seeing, like, are you guys having success with that? Or in my experience, 500 down is like, they're never paying for anything.
So I'm going to just paraphrase that question into two. Number, what is your average down payment, and do you use that as a cap cost reduction or a security deposit? And Joe, we'll start with you.
I would say our average down payment is probably $750. We do advertise down payments starting at $1. At the end of the day, we want a good quality customer if we can get it. That comes back to you. That's your underwriting decision. That decides on how much money you want to put on the street with that customer. Is that a good customer in your eyes? Because all of us are a little bit different because we have different underwriting. We have different risk. That comes back to you. So at the end of the day, $1 down helps drive traffic. We're trying to get a good customer. We need traffic because we need to sell cars. Tax time, we've got some customers that might need $2,500 down on a car. But then again, that's an internal decision that we need to make that you would need to make.
Okay, over to Nick. Average down payment, and do you use it as cap cost reduction or deposit, down payment? Security deposit.
We average $1,500 down. We sell a lot of $10,000 plus vehicles in our lease portfolio. And what I've found is the lease model just motivates customers to come up with some more down. What we're finding is, our customer bases they're getting raises right now. The economy's good, they're doing well, and they're willing to come up with money down to get a newer, nicer vehicle. So that might surprise a lot of folks, but we really have no trouble averaging around $1,500 down a car. It's great. So the $500 down thing, really that's about 10% maybe of the customers that walk in the door are down payment motivated. What we're finding in the current environment is people are more vehicle motivated than down payment motivated, if that makes sense. And you know, one other thing to speaking to Joe is, you know, what is your competitive niche? Is it super low downs? And if it's super low downs, one would assume that you have a super low ACV car. Now, what kind of customer is attracted to that? Is that the customer you want, you know, is that the customer you want to be working with, or you want to work with a customer that's willing to come up with a little bit of down to get a nice car? And we find that the newer, nicer car attracts a newer, nicer customer.
Okay, good. Kevin, you want to touch on that at all?
One thing I didn't answer, and I don't think Nick did either, as far as the security deposit question, we have a $300 security deposit. So of our average $750 down, we're able to take $300 of that and move it to a liability and not pay taxes on that.
Okay, good. Nick?
Yeah, ours is $350, and that's yet another advantage of leasing is you can defer that income, that security deposit, and right now we have about $1.4 million of security deposits.
You said how much was your security deposit?
$350 a car.
$350 a car, okay.
And so we have about $1.4 million of security deposits on the liability of our balance sheet that we would have paid income tax on if we were a buyer, payer, dealer.
Kevin, you want to touch on that?
So our average down is about $1,250. We ran the game from $500 to $3,000, and we actually go a little north of that, but on average we're around $1,250. We use it as cap cost reduction, and I would completely echo Nick. You know, what do you want from your deals? What customer base do you want? Do you want to be having that customer that's driven by the low down payment because they can get in, and you know, are they going to trash your car quicker than the guy who's got a little money in your car?
Makes sense.
Called sweat equity.
So did you have an additional question?
Yeah, so what you were saying, what is your average ACV on the car? Like, what do you pay for a car for your lot? And then what kind of down payment do you require for that ACV?
Okay, so about 30 to 40% of the vehicles we lease every month are recycled inventory. And this is another beautiful thing about leasing as you mature. These are cars that we've already collected one note on, we've already gotten down payment on, and really we're in them zero, you know, but we do put them in our system for around MMR. And so with that part, those recycled units, you know, I would say the average is around $4,000 to $5,000, which is 40% of our sales. The fresh inventory is more like $8,000 to $12,000.
That's what you pay for it?
Pardon me?
That's what you're paying for it?
Yeah,
Okay.
8 to 12 grand. And then, so you average all that out, we're around $7,500.
Okay, nice.
Joe?
We're the same way. When we go to the auction, we'll buy an $8,000 to $9,000 car because that's a first generation car, and we're going to try to get 10 to 20% down on that car. So if I can get 10 to 20% down on that car 6 times, I'm out of the car just by the down payment. You know, so we generate our own $7,000 cars, our own $6,000 cars, our own $5,000 cars. But when we start with the first generation car, normally around $8,000.
Kevin, you want to touch on that?
I'm echoing the exact same thing these guys are already saying. The recycled units are going to drive your cost down, but you're already out of the street on those cars. You don't have any real money in them. But when we're going to auction, we're somewhere around that 6 to 8, and we're getting up into that $8,000 to $10,000 car as well.
So part of that answer, as they described, is in a lease or pay here business model, your inventory is more like a fleet. So you can put it out once or twice or 3 times to 3 different customers. And that's why you're hearing the answer, first generation, second generation, third generation vehicle. They may start at 9 or 12 grand, but by the time they go out the third time, it might be an ACV of $5,000. Do you have one next question?
Okay, and so leading into that, do you guys have like a credit line to be able to support that? You know, because if the car is $8,000 and you're getting like $2,000 down, are you guys using a credit line? And I haven't had a lot of luck with the creditors working with lease or pay here. So
let's frame that question around capital. How available is capital for a lease or pay here operator? Is that a fair question?
Yep.
Okay, good. Nick?
Well, I think capital is a huge challenge, whether you're a buy here, pay here, or a lease here, pay here dealer. It seems a little more acute in the lease here, pay here side of things than the buy here, pay here side. I think at first glance, you would probably look at that. You know, there's several buy here, pay here lenders. There's probably one lease here, pay here lender. And so, you know, looking at it from a high perspective, you're like, well, I got to do buy or pay here because there's no lease or pay here money. But then you take a little bit closer look at what really is out there, and the LHPH guys are in the room right now, and they're the people that provide my line of credit, and just they understand leasing so well. They're more like a consulting company for me, helping me make good decisions when it comes to everything. So I'd highly recommend that you go by their booth and talk with them if you're interested in starting.
So you definitely believe paying their rates is worth it?
Pardon me?
You definitely believe that paying their rates is worth it, as far as like their onboarding fee and then their interest and.
Well, for me, I had a choice: don't grow, or grow very little, or grow a lot and pay their rate.
Yes.
And that's the choice, you know. And as long as you have a really good plan on how you're going to grow, when you're going to, you know, what you're going to grow to, and then when you're going to start being able to cash flow and pay down that debt, you know, that's great debt. That's the best kind of debt you can have. That debt fuels your growth, fuels your profitability, and it fuels your future net worth. So yeah, the rates are higher than I'd like to pay, but that's what's out there, and I wanted to grow, so I did it.
Really good point. Kevin, from a CFO point of view, what can you tell us about availability of capital, need for capital in a lease here, pay here operation?
In lease here, pay here, if you're going to grow, you're going to need capital, whether that comes from private money or whether that comes from vendors such as LHPH Capital. That's really up to you and your choices and your availability. I would echo Nick in that, you know, capital is always going to be any business's just struggle because you can only grow to your capital constraints. As far as paying the rate, you're making exponentially more on your leases than you're paying in rate. So the choice is really, do you want to grow or do you want to stay stagnant? And if you want to grow, you're going to need the access to the capital. And I would completely echo Nick in that they know so much about leasing. We don't consider them our lenders, we consider them our partners.
Okay, great. Joe, do you want to touch on that?
I started in a local bank, and that's where I always, my family's local. I started with a partner that was local, so we had local ties to a local bank. And that's what we always used. They were able to grow with us as we produced and we proved ourselves to them. So we're able to operate without them at this point, and that's obviously a good feeling. But I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I didn't pay the rate or pay their fees.
But that bank was much lower fees than, you know, like LHPH, I'm assuming.
But that was an option to me.
Yeah.
It might not be an option to everybody. You know what I mean? So it comes down to you again. What is available to you? You know, if I mean that's your decision.
No, I understand. And then my other question was, as you grow, how do you get good employees to, you know, be able to run your different locations without being there?
Everybody in this room has that same problem. Employees are employees. You find a great employee, you got to do your best to keep them. Even a great employee will go south on you from time to time. We all have that same issue.
I think the biggest question you ought to ask yourself is, would you work for you? And if the answer is yes, and then you're going to recruit great people, and you're going to take great care of them, and you're going to pay them well, and they're going to want to do their best for you. And you're going to provide them great training, you're going to make it clear what you want, and you're going to hold them accountable to what you want. So that would be the very first thing I would start with. I have most of my leadership team's been with me for 15 years, and we've built our entire business around the core, you know, leadership. We meet frequently, we talk a lot. Our meetings are structured with an agenda. We get a lot done, and we are all collectively working to improve our business, and it's a beautiful thing.
Awesome. Thank you for the questions. We're just going to take some other questions. If we run out of questions from the floor, I'll be happy to come back to you, but let's spread it around a little bit. And let's go to our next question.
Hi. Nick, I heard you say deal pack for your DMS. I'd like to know from all of you why you choose your DMS and what add-ons you find to be most valuable and why.
Dealer management software provider. Nick, do you want to start that one?
DealPack knows leasing. They know used car leasing. So that was the main reason we went with DealPack, and we've been pleased with them. There are other DMS providers out there. There are new ones coming on the market. They're the two hardest things I've ever been through in my life were I got divorced and I changed DMS providers.
Which one was more expensive?
They were both painful. So if you're starting out fresh, you want to take some time, you want to demo a lot of DMSs, and you want to make the right decision. For me to, not that I'm not happy with DealPack, but it would have to be the biggest whiz-bang, most amazing thing ever for me to even consider going through that again. So be real careful about your decision, because it's one of the biggest decisions you're going to make about your business.
So Kevin, who's your DMS provider and why did you select them, or how did you select them?
We use DealPack as well. They know used car leasing. They have all of the ideas and modules that you will need to work through your entire business portfolio, from the accounting side, the inventory management side, the customers, collections, and the service. We started with a different DMS provider to start with, and they were not all linked. They didn't talk to each other. There was vast, multiple duplicate entries, creating just a tremendous workload. Faster, easier, simpler. So we switched to DealPack, and I will completely echo, take your time, make wise decisions here, because it will be one of the most painful experiences of your life if you switch.
Joe, can you answer the same question?
Ditto. I started out with a nickel and dime company, and I paid nickel and dimes. And whenever I had to switch to DealPack, because again, they know leasing, they know what we do. So the conversion, I hadn't been through a divorce, but I've been through a conversion. That wasn't fun. So if you're in business and you can go directly to a company that already has a leasing module, I highly recommend it. We all use the same one because they are kind of professionals.
What add-ons did you find most valuable, Joe?
Sorry, what was the question?
What add-on programs with DealPack did you find to be most beneficial?
What add-on programs did you find to be most beneficial with using DealPack?
The thing about DealPack, like Kevin said, is they interface with everybody. They'll interface with Pastime. They'll interface with Iteron. They'll interface with everybody. They're a software company. They have the service modules that you can add on. They have an accounting module that's already built in. So they're going to have it, and they're constantly interfacing with other companies every day.
Like most discussions we have up here, you may field a question up here, but certainly the trade center or the trade show is where you'll go to find the answers. Go specifically to the vendor, whether that's capital or software or whatever else. They'll give you the full description of what they do and how they can help you. Did you have a question, Larry?
Yes, and this probably is a dumb question, but do you find that from a marketing standpoint, from a selling standpoint, there's a problem with perception from the customer about leasing versus purchasing the car?
Customer perception of leasing versus financing.
I'll jump in there first. Our customers are concerned about how much does it take me to get into the car and how much do I have to pay a week. That is as simple as it is. They're not concerned if it's a buy here, pay here piece of paper or a lease here, pay here piece of paper. They just care about the two items. How much to drive this car off the lot today and how much do I have to pay you next week, next month?
I would say that all three of us have a lease purchase. So we're all showing them a closed-in lease that gives them an option to own the vehicle if that's what they so wish. You know, last fall, Sears spends a lot of money on advertising and things of this nature. They were trying to sell their lawnmowers. They came out with a program that was called Lease It, Love It, Own It. Lease it, love it, own it. I grabbed part of that, and it's part of our process where when we sit down with a couple the very first thing we do is we talk to them about a lease program, about how they're going to love it, and about how they can own it. So if you use that to your benefit instead of allowing somebody to use it against you, you shouldn't have a problem.
Kevin, you want to touch on that? Oh, sorry, I missed. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, just real quick. I think Kevin's right. They really, it's the down in the month lease. But there are, we found quite a bit of pushback with the Hispanic community. And there are a handful of deals where we've just said, you know what, you win, we'll do a buy or pay here deal with you. But that's been maybe 2 deals a year. It just is so small. And the other thing I'll say is the benefits of leasing for us are the same benefits for the customer. Less sales tax, or better, you get a better car because more of your payment is going towards the vehicle rather than the state. And then the ease of getting out of it. We always talk about if you want to upgrade early, and we also do an early termination. If you want to get out of the car, if you have a life-changing event, bring the car back, pay a fee, you're done. These are legitimate benefits to our customer that we just sell to them. I spend a lot of time in our sales meeting I do a retail sales installment contract and show them a lease contract. Even if you charge a really high money factor, which we do, there's savings in a lease over a traditional retail sales installment contract loan.
You mentioned one other thing, to transition from one car to another one. How much is that termination fee usually?
We charge $9.95 plus any damages, and then we'll show the loan is paid on their bureau and let them walk away.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you. We got another question from the floor. Please step up.
Maybe not so much a question, more of a comment. We started in this whole used car thing about 6 years ago, and we came to the conferences in Florida, and immediately were introduced to the lease here, pay here model, and really I guess I could only say we were overwhelmed at the features, but the lawyers scared the crap out of everybody. It was, if you say the wrong thing, if you use the wrong word, if you say down payment versus cap cost reduction, whatever, somebody's going to sue you and you're going to lose your company. And that's basically, we didn't know how to defend that. So that's more of a comment to the lease here, pay here fans. Somehow you got to overcome that. I heard a little bit of that pushback, like, okay, so people are selling stuff, you can buy it or not, but it's really not as bad as it seems. Maybe just comment on the whole legal environment. Is it really as bad as it seems? That's the first question. I have a couple more.
I've been doing it for almost 10 years. 0 lawsuits related to the lease model. The only issue we have is when a customer files a 13, the lawyer is not familiar with the laws regarding leases when a customer files a Chapter 13, and we have to submit a relief, what's called a relief of stay, to get our asset back. And now that the bankruptcy attorney community is familiar with us and what we do, we have a lot less pushback on that now. But that's just been my experience. Now, if you're from California, I'm sorry. probably got a lot of, that's just, there's a huge culture out there going after dealers. But for the rest of the country, I just don't think, I think that's an attorney that either doesn't, he doesn't know what he's talking about, so he just goes into scare tactic. I don't know, but I can just tell you my experience.
A lot of same kind of talk came out when regulations and CFPB started to, really land on the industry and exude their, presence. And attorneys can be intimidating purposely and for very self-serving reasons as well. So, Joe, your thoughts on that whole topic?
If I'm going to listen to my lawyer scare me every time I need to do something, I'm probably going to have to pack the bags and go to the house.
I'd be a mailman.
Yeah, I'd be a mailman. A lawyer is going to tell you the law. That's his job.
It wasn't my lawyer. It was the ones that were at the convention.
No, I
who are
understand.
putting on panels saying, don't do it because it's.
And they're telling you what could happen.
Right.
And legally, they are correct. But does it happen? In our experience, we've never had it happen over years and years and thousands of deals. So to us, I'm saying that I'm not speaking for these guys. For me, it's less than 1% of my worry per day.
Okay. Related to that question then is, this has been going on at least as far as we've been involved, and I've always been compelled by the features, like I said. But I keep wondering, why not a greater uptake? What is the sort of, what's the holdup that's keeping people from going this direction? It seems like, gosh, it seems like a no-brainer, but there's a reason why almost everybody still stays in buy here, pay here. What is that? I mean, what's your thoughts on it?
So I read an article from the CFO of Caterpillar about 8 years ago in an accounting journal, and she was directly talking about that. Why are not more people not getting into leasing? And her things were, it's really not complicated, but it seems complicated. You do have a different varying accounting that is slightly different than any other accounting that you will ever deal with, but it's not that it's any more difficult, it's just different. People like to feel comfortable. Change is hard, and dealing with things and having to go and educate attorneys about the legalities of the lease, or go and educate a banker about why you don't have a giant receivable on your balance sheet. Those are all items that just take up your day, and change is hard. So if you want to get into it and get the rewards and the benefits, you're going to have some pain to go with it.
Joe?
I was just sitting there thinking, if we were all afraid to ask our wife out the first time, we might not have ever married her. Don't be afraid of what doesn't really happen. Change is hard. Had you never asked her out, you might not have ever married her. You might not have ever divorced her. Maybe that wasn't the right fit. But
I was going to say, Nick's probably saying, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have asked that question.
change is hard, and like Kevin said, I agree. But it's very profitable. Once you do it, you're going to look back and you're going to say, I'm glad I asked her out. I'm glad I made the change.
Probably 95% of the dealers out there that do in-house financing are buy here, pay here dealers. So there's just a lot of established benchmarks. A lot of people understand it. The lenders understand it. Leasing, not so much. And I'll echo what Kevin said. It's a very simple model. It's much less complicated than buy or pay here. The RFC, the charge-offs, the collateral recovery, da-da-da-da-da-da. It's just, how much down did you take in, and how much did you take in payments? And then rather than having charge-offs, you have depreciation on your asset. And it's, if I were to walk you through the two different P&Ls, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this is so much simpler. It really is. But, people are entrenched. And yes, it is painful to switch from buy or pay here to lease or pay here, primarily because you're probably going to have to get a different DMS. I mean, and like I told you earlier, that ain't easy. So I mean, it's hard to switch. But like these guys said, I'm so glad I did it, and I would never look back. And I do believe it's a legitimate competitive advantage for those of us who have are willing to go through a little bit of pain to get there.
One of the hindrances it kind of became a showstopper for us was this notion that you can't sort of ride the fence. If you're going to do it all in, because your people are going to constantly screw it up. Instead of, they're going to use the wrong terminology when they're working a deal with a customer, and somebody's going to get mad, and somebody's going to sue you, and you're going to, and whatever. But it still seems like, in my heart of hearts, I want to believe you could do that. You could train your people well enough that they know how to do a lease here, pay here deal, they know how to do a buy here, pay here deal, and you can do either one, whichever works best for your customer.
That's a great question. It was one of the ones that was coming up next, and so let's just address that. Is it possible, is it smart to do buy here, pay here, and lease here, pay here out of the same rooftop? Joe, let's go down your side.
I say no, primarily because while you can train the staff, when the staff goes to war, they're going to go to war with the path of least resistance.
Absolutely.
They're going to go to war with what they know. They're going to go to war and do what they did yesterday. They're not going to do, just like you've been looking at this for a few years, they're not going to go on the front lines and sell a lease, so the lease for you will be not successful because your Army didn't carry that forward. Yep. You either have to get all in or all out. You've got to do one thing and do it well. That's my opinion.
Kevin?
I'm going to echo the exact same thing. Jack of all trades, master of none. You're going to go to war with your people to sell cars, and they're going to do what they know to do. You're not going to ever get any traction in lease, and you'll scrap the program.
Not to push back on that necessarily, but at least to offer another thought there. We don't have a huge community. Well, I'll preface this by saying the comment was made that we have some pushback within the Hispanic community because they want to own their car. And so you say, well, okay, we just back off and say, okay, we'll do a buy here, pay here deal for you. What we're finding is I certainly don't want to estrange that community because they're some of my best payers. They're very competent and reliable. But it's a different culture, and I need to address that. So if I'm going to follow that path, go to war with all of my best resources, then I'm going to disenfranchise a significant portion of my community. What's the trade-off there?
Your best payers, you're still going to show them a way to own the car. I mean, show them a way to own the car. You know, after the lease, they're going to pay the residual. You're at a zero balance. You own the car, I'll hand you the title. There's no difference. It's a technicality. The only difference is in your 3-year term, you don't have to do the residual at 2.5 years or whenever you decide to do it. We're still going to a zero balance. You're still going to get a chance to own this vehicle, sir. You're going to show them options. What you haven't shown them is the benefits to the lease. Now then you can upgrade. I can upgrade you quicker, easier, and simpler. I can show you another vehicle. If you don't like that vehicle, we'll get you out of it, get you into something that you like a little bit better. So show them the options. Also show them a way to get to a zero balance. You're the win-win. You found a better way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me just jump in here for a second.
May I say just one more
Yep.
quick thing? You know, you bring up a legitimate reason not to do it. My experience, 80 to 90% of our Hispanic community, they trust us, they believe us when we show them the difference between the two. But you're going to still get that 10% that they just won't accept it. And so do a buy or pay here deal on them, you know. But if you're going to make the switch, and it sounds to me like you're pretty motivated to make the switch, you just got to do it, and then deal with those scenarios as they come along. What I found with so many folks that look into lease or payers, they like it, they think it's great, but there's just always a reason not to do it, and then it never gets done. And it's like years go by and they never do it. My suggestion is watch a Nike ad and just do it.
Last
All right.
question real quick.
Yes, sir.
What is the silver bullet that could kill the whole thing? Like, you know, is there something some sort of looming deal, like some potential regulation or something that everybody goes, oh my gosh, if they did that, we'd be sunk. If there's not, I want to know about it. If there is, then I want to know about it.
Silver bullet killer?
I think a meteor could hit Earth.
Yes.
I think aliens could invade us. I don't know. There's so many, you know, I mean, if we live our lives based on what could happen,
Yes.
we wouldn't even leave our rooms, you know? So I don't have an answer to that. I think our future is really bright. You know, we're so much easier to do business with than subprime dealers that have to go to Westlake and Lobel and blah, blah, blah. And new car dealers, frankly, they don't like our customer. They don't want our customer. The only reason they deal with our customers is because their GSM says we got to sell more cars, so get subprime business. And so we embrace our customer. We know our customer. Our business is custom tailored to help that customer. We have so many solutions for our customer that so many dealers out there can't even come close to, that I just think our future is super bright.
Okay, we're down to the last 5 minutes. So if you've got a question that you're shy to ask, now's the time to step up and ask it. We've got 2 in line, so let's go over to you and hear your question.
What's your average money factor as it equates to interest? I mean,
We advertise really competitive prices on our website, and to make up for that margin, we charge a very high money factor. So it's about 28%.
28?
28.
What about you other guys?
We are at 42.5.
Right around the 22.9 range.
Okay. So.
Good.
And then the other thing is, you know, these type of customers, they bring back cars, they're destroyed, and you know, how often you collect your early termination fees, and how do you deal with that? What does that look like?
It's the same as in the buy or pay here world. So, you know, you'll collect on a few, but that's just a cost of doing business. What we found is the longer we wait to repo, the better the chance of the car getting destroyed. So we're looking for the car about 20 days in.
Joe, any comment on that?
Same.
Okay.
Same problem.
All right, let's go to our next question. We got time for 2 more.
Our situation is we have maybe 32, 33 retail storefronts, new car franchises. The way those were set up years ago is everything that can get done through regular goes through regular, then it goes through special, and the last people to see it, if they absolutely can't get done through subprime or the bottom feeders, and we have 10 locations that take on that business after an interview. Now, given that, so we get the bottom of the bottom to look at. Given that as a backdrop, I don't know how your stores are set up. Would any of you change your? I'm real hesitant to put a nicer, newer, more expensive car out to that book of business. We've got about, no money borrowed, we got about $28 million, $30 million on the road. But we do it, and our biggest struggle right now is keeping insurance on them. I don't know how that would translate to. I've looked at lease here, pay here for about the last 15 years and been discouraged because of where our customer base comes from. How does that translate, and would that change your mind if the only people you could get, I'm assuming you keep the cream of the crop, not the crap of the crap. So we're a little bit different. How's that translate?
So can I just paraphrase that question to make sure we understand it? Are you asking how do you select the customers for your lease portfolio? Where do you draw the sort of line of I'll take customers above this level of criteria? No? So
I'm asking them if they knew they were only going to get the bottom fee, the worst of the worst, would they still go to a lease here, pay here environment, or would they? But I think all 3 of these gentlemen have a buy here, pay here background before they were lease here, pay here. So I'm asking if that was their only customer base, would they still make that switch and get newer, more expensive cars and put them in that?
okay, you got it.
The gentleman that does the NEO, he basically looks at your database and scores your customer, your D. And he says if you put a D customer in a D car, it's disaster. And, you know, that's a tough situation that you're in. I found, you know, I do retail. And what I found is when I decided that we're a lease here, pay here dealer that does a little bit of retail, our portfolio blossomed. Delinquencies went down, repossessions went down, everything was better. We still, retail is still part of our business. It's a crucial part of our business, but it is a secondary part of our business. Whereas most dealers do retail, and if they absolutely have to, if Westlake won't even take them, or CAC, then we'll put them in one of our, you know, 05 Taurus trade-ins. And you know, if that's your business model, I think you're going to get what you know. It's just kind of a. So I don't think lease here, pay here, buy here, pay here isn't going to change that. Right. There are, no matter what, there are benefits to lease here, pay here. But I would really, you know, our philosophy is if we can't get like a higher tier lender to approve it, it's our customer. It's our in-house customer. So if we can't get a good, profitable approval through like a Cap One or a Wells Fargo or something like that, it's going to go into our lease or payer portfolio. We just don't do business with the high fee, high rate GPS. You got to put a GPS. I mean, at that point, you definitely should be putting them in your own portfolio.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something you have to make a commitment to lease or pay or buy or pay here. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of trouble.
I'm going to answer your question fairly simply. Yes, I would make the change, even if I knew I was dealing with the bottom of the bottom customer, because the lease here, pay here platform just gives you so many more options. You can change everything you need. You're not going to be stuck with all the related finance company dilemmas that you're going to have dealing with that bottom of the bottom customer.
Okay, let's move to the last question of the afternoon, and then we'll do a closeout and be done.
So if this has been spoken to earlier, I apologize. I got in here late. The question is, in South Carolina, where I'm from, as a lease company, you actually have to put on the title with the customer as a lease company. Speaking of the point of liability issues, so that customer runs over a school bus stop or whatever it may be, and you get sued by, the council, suing that customer, and you, since you're on the title and everything that you're associated with. Have you had any experience with people being sued like that, or dealers being sued? And does the insurance, I know that you can purchase insurance for that. Are there layers, it's a multi-level question, are there layers like different LLCs you should set up, or what kind of recommendations do you have to protect yourself and your assets?
Sure. So we did touch on that earlier at the start of the session, but I'll just recap if you want. Nick, just want to touch on liability insurance?
We've never been sued for it. We don't have it. And yeah, I mean, I've never had that issue in my 10 years of experience.
And how big an administration is it to ensure your customers keep liability insurance in place?
For us, it depends on the asset. If it's a high dollar asset, we want them to have full coverage insurance. If it's say a $7,000 or less asset, we're okay with liability. We just charge them an extra $50 for collateral protection, and if the car gets totaled, we write it off. And every year, at the end of the year, we have a surplus in that account. We have very few total losses.
Okay, Kevin, insurance coverage both for the dealership and for the customer driving your car.
So to echo him on vicarious liability, that it's been in business 10 years, haven't ever had the problem. Looked at it, Graves Amendment, just don't see a problem. We do dot our I's and we cross our T's. I mean, and that's key to any business being successful, any business not getting sued. Make sure that what you're doing, and you do it repeatedly, you don't cut corners, you just do it the right way, and you'll stay out of court, typically, unless you're in California from what I hear.
Joe, you want to touch on that?
They've touched on it. The Graves Amendment kind of protects you, but like Kevin said, you've got to make sure you do your due diligence. You've got to make sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. They've got insurance. They did everything when you delivered that car that you can to make sure everything is good and legal, and they're a good driver and things of that nature. So protecting yourself will go a long ways in combating a very vicarious liability situation.
Okay, great. Listen, we're out of time. It went by quickly. I want to ask you to please, first of all, I'll ask our panel members to stick around here for a few minutes after we close out this session. We're going to migrate over to the vendor trade show, I think in 15 minutes, 11. It will be there for a couple hours. Come by the NIADA booth if you've got additional questions. But please join me in saying thank you to the panel members for taking their time to be here.